What is Power View? You probably have heard that word used before, and you're correct in thinking if it's an add-in that enables you to create dashboards or reports within Excel. Just like Power Pivot, it is another add-in that exists at the same level. In other words, it is part of the Power BI suite, or trio so far: Power Maps, Power View, and Power Pivot. It is used to create reports, as mentioned before. But not only that, it is very similar to other formatting whenever you're creating reports with other suites. If you're familiar with SSRS, or reporting services, you remember that there are some canvas, some objects that you drag and drop, just like if it was a report. The same applies here. That's where navigating Power View gives you three main areas that you will be using. The canvas, which is used on most of the other report tools that we are aware of. A filter pane that is similar to what we have been using in Power Pivot, along with a field list. These last two ones we have been using to a certain degree and are very similar to Power Pivot, what we've been doing so far. So keep in mind, while being another add-in, it is not within Power Pivot. It is at the same level, and it is also within Excel. You will see a tab that, once it is enabled, will be named Power View. Let's go ahead and start thinking about what we should do next to create a Power View report. To create a Power View report, the first thing we have to do is, well, we have to enable it. Once it's enabled, we will be able to create a report. Otherwise, just like in Power Pivot, if the add-in is not enabled, we will not be able to create any report or dashboards that we want to take advantage of. One of the things there that we have to really keep in mind, we can forget that easily once we navigate across Excel. For adding views, which is another part, you must drag and drop them, just like we have been doing in Power Pivot. Nothing really new about that. It is something that it just becomes very part of the routine that we do now in Power Pivot. The same applies here. Moving on to the filters that we apply as well. We've seen slicers. You can take advantage of those as well, and just with drag and drop. And we should not forget that these are also to be cleared once they have been used, because just like in Power Pivot, they can easily keep the information, and you will spend some time spinning around trying to figure out why the information is filtered or you're not seeing all the data. Keep those in mind. Now, time to go and moving on to a demo. Let's start creating our first Power View report. Let's click on Excel and open a blank workbook. Notice that Power View is nowhere to be seen. As mentioned before, it is an add-in that also needs to be enabled. You probably noticed before when we were doing the insert for Power Pivot tables that there is a Power View option here. Let's click on it and see what happens. Notice it's indicating that we need to enable the add-in. We could enable it by here, or we could do it the other way around. Let's cancel here, just like we do with Power Pivot. File, Options, go to our add-ins. Click on COM add-ins, go, and enable Power View. We click OK. We still don't see the tab. That's fine. The big difference is now when we click Power View, it opens. Notice that we just added a sheet in here. And of course, we have no connection. And that is right. We haven't added one. So what we have to go first and do is create a connection. Let's go into Power Pivot, create a connection. Get external data, From our access, we'll browse for our Northwind database in our module, test the connection, click Next. We're going to select our tables and the usual order details with these related tables, and we're going to click Finish. It finished importing successfully. Great. There they are. Let's switch back into Excel, and now we get a message from PowerView. The data model has changed. When you finish editing the data model, click OK. We have. Notice, our data is already there, and that's great. Now, we were talking about the canvas before. This area we see here in this worksheet is a canvas from here to there. These would be your filters or where your views would be added. So let's start adding columns in here by dragging and dropping. First thing we would like to do is add a quantity. Notice that it added it to the left. It took a little bit, but it did add it. And we're going to do also an addition of the category. Well, let's do the other procedure around. Why? Because we were eager to get data. I'm just going to choose first the category now and the quantity to reorganize the order. Notice we have the information here. We also have the ability to filter if we would like. As soon as I clicked on that filter, that functionality appeared here. We also have views. We would, if we want to add a filter, notice that I can just drag and drop onto the filters. And we have the functionality added in there. Let's click back on this table and notice. Let's take a look and review our data. We can expand it if we like. We can click on it and format it. Maybe we want to decrease the decimals there. We can add the commas that already added those decimals. We'll leave it as it is. We can sort them from up or down. The same with the category. We'll do that alphabetically. We have our first data added here. That is the first part we wanted to take advantage of. Now let's go ahead and filter. Let's just choose. And notice it just did it like that. It's simple. It's very interactive. That's one of the key aspects to keep in mind here. What other options we have on the screen? Notice that we have tables, bar charts, column charts, other charts, map, tiles. There's a variety of options that we have within our PowerView. And along, by clicking the tab, we still see a few more. We could modify, click on the entire table, and choose a theme for it. Maybe you want to choose this one. Notice that the colors matched accordingly. Backgrounds, fonts. We can refresh all of our data. We can view the relationships also. Very similar format as in Power Pivot. We can activate them, deactivate them, delete them, edit them, and create new ones. And last but not least, we can add other objects inside our canvas. This is how you create a PowerView report. Now, we looked at filters as one of the ways, or slicers, to bring down the data to a certain amount, filter it down. Another way to do that is using tiles. Tiles can be used to group and filter by, or they can just be used to present your data in a card-like format. It is a nice way and unusual, and depending on the amount of data, you might see if it's useful for your needs for presenting the data to your users or not. That's really one of the big uses of creating tiles. The other idea for presenting data to the users are, as you already are familiar with, charts. They are added in a similar fashion as in Excel. Also configured, you have availability of making some changes to them as you're used to in Excel or Power Pivot, and they can be added, dragged and dropped, moved, resized easily. Last but not least, maps. One key item to keep in mind whenever you're using maps is that you do require a geographical data field. And we'll see that whenever you're seeing the field pane, that it shows a little globe icon. It's indicating that it is already formatted for that purpose. That is what you're going to be needed in order to create a map. Otherwise, you might run into trouble. So now let's go ahead and take a look at all these topics in a demo. In a previous demo, we started off by adding data to our chart here in Power View, our report. We just added the category and the quantity, and that's great. Notice that we can sort them by clicking on this up or down, the same with the quantity. You could also filter them, and once you click the filter, you notice that the field pane also serves for that purpose. You can expand it and choose the categories, or you could do it by quantity, allowing to filter much easier with this type of values here. Don't forget to set it to the default or clear it in this case. Now, what if we want to add a slicer as we spoke before? If we head up here and try to click on slicer, it's grayed out. It's not there. Well, let's go ahead and do the following. Let's go to category, drag and drop it. As soon as we did that, notice that the slicer was enabled. So let's click on it, and there we go. We have our newly created slicer here. Let's reorganize things a little bit better here and move them around. Grab onto this table and move it further down. Leaving it there. As mentioned before, real estate can be a little bit of problematic sometimes, so you have to work around your canvas to format it appropriately. Now that we grab this one, we'll leave it in the middle and expand it a little bit more. There we have our slicer, which we can choose, and notice it works. We clear it, and it is readily available for us. One down, a few more to go. What else can we do here? Let's take a look. If you click on your tables here, values, you'll see that you still have other options. We mentioned before about tiles. Let's take a look what happens when we click a tile here. Notice up here, we are able to, in a card-like format, hover and navigate and filter at the same time. There are a few other types we can look into now that we have that enabled, the tile flow. And now we can see it down even more like a card. We could still revert back to the tab strip format, or we could just remove it. That was one way of adding a tile. The other one is by dragging and drop it into your tile by. And we can do that once more by just dragging and dropping that field in here. And notice, there it goes, and we can also remove it. That's what really the functionality of a tile is. But that's not all we can do. What about adding charts? We were talking about charts and maps. Well, we're here having the data available for us. Let's copy and paste this table and move it downwards. It can be a little tricky sometimes just grabbing those corners. Once we have it there, we can click on the type of chart. Even though it looks grayed out, it's not. So you can choose either bar chart, column, or our other chart. For this case, we're just going to go and use a pie. Notice that it already updated and it's available there for us. Some niceties that we can do with this chart are we can sort by quantity category, descending or ascending. And what about changing the colors? They're great, but we probably could use some others. Let's click on layout and see what options are available for us. The title, the legend, well, that's not necessarily what we're looking for. Let's click on home. Not much available either. Let's go to view, design, page layout. Once again, click on your chart and we'll start looking for what are the options we have available for us. Across, review, view, power view, and here's what we're looking for. Themes. These colors are great, but let's try others. Let's try this one. It's a little bit more bright, as we can see. So we have a few choices available for us. We can hide the filters, expand them again, and pop this out. What this does is uses the entire real estate for a moment, and once you hover back, you can put it back in its place. Great, we have charts now. And we click on them and it highlights exactly only that one. Control Z as usual will take you back. What else can we do? What would be the next step? Well, we're getting a little crowded in here, so let's do the following. Let's move the slicer a little bit up here, and let's of course name our Power View report. Let's call it sales by category and state. You're wondering, well, where's the state? Well, we're getting there. We're going to be adding it right now. I'm going to be resizing this a little bit more. There's a couple of things we'll see. There's a bug in the maps that if we do the following, we expand products and drag and drop category along with the ship city. And now that we have it here along with the quantity that we want to add from order details, we should be able to see a map from this. So now we click on the table and click on maps. Notice it picked it up. Sometimes if you ever run into a problem that it does not show up, use your original data table, copy it and delete it and then paste it. That will solve your problem. It can happen sometimes that it will not reflect the currently states or ships cities in here correctly. Notice that we can still pop this up and filter accordingly. This one's enabled. Beverages, candies, in a nice format. It's very visually appealing. You can still zoom in. Notice that just because it was a little bit cramped when we're doing outside, it adjusts accordingly. But you can still go in there and filter accordingly, zoom in, zoom out. Depends on what you want to do. So now that we have this, we have a map, we have a slicer, we have our data, we have a chart. Notice we have a complete dashboard here, and it's just a sheet. Let's name that sheet accordingly too. Notice the other sheet is just empty. This is just the report itself, nothing else. We save it just for the sake of it. And that is how you would create a dashboard report within Power View.